Hello, it's Rafael Gutierrez, and today I have a interesting topic. It has been a while since I made a video. Uh, I just had a lot of things going on, and this is actually kind of a hobby well, it's a hobby. So I tended to have to let go of something, and so that's what it was. Now, I usually like to talk about things in clinical anatomy, sport injuries, anatomy, physiology, micro, and all that stuff. But today I'm actually going to talk about something different just because I ran into it and it really was something that made me think. Now I'm going to start with this. A couple weeks ago, I ended up meeting a gentleman who was involved in HEMA. HEMA, for those of you who don't know, it's a society trying to recreate the old European martial arts using books and texts that were left behind in the past. If you think about it, it would be like learning karate through a book written in the past. Now, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that that's what it would be like. But they do something different as well. One of the things they do is, as they don't necessarily know exactly what and how things were meant to be done, they go to, from what this gentleman told me at least, they go to the sport aspect of the martial art in question. So for instance, if they're teaching something with a longbow, they'll go to different archery people and ask them, well, how is it this might have been done? Or they might, if they're doing swords, they go to fencing schools and try to find out what is it that people, how is it a fencer, someone who's an Olympic style fencer would use certain techniques. Now, besides that, they actually have another thing that he was telling me he does, and that is they go to traditional martial arts. What I mean by that is this. If you think about, let's say you're doing something with a sword, and you notice that the move is identical to something in a bow kata. You can ask someone who does bow kata, how do you use this? And you can see if things work the right way or if there's something off. Now, if it works, then you use it. You can actually then test it with other people. If it doesn't work, well, then there's something different. Maybe it's that the bow doesn't work the same as a sword in that area. The other thing they might do is they might go to kendo and see how they do things in the sport too. So what they do is they don't just rely on the books that they have, but they go out and see what other people are doing to see if it works. Now, I thought that was interesting, and it's something that as martial artists, I think we all have to do. But that actually goes to why I actually started talking to this. As I was online, I started looking at different things. And there was someone who mentioned that they were interested in a seminar, and someone mentioned how they were interested in one part of the seminar, but not the second one. And someone said, well, you know, if you're ever going to do things different, you kind of need to look at everything that happens. I actually will tell people I love seminars. I will go to any seminar that I can afford and go, and is near where I'm at. Just because sometimes you see something that's different than what you were doing. Sometimes you see something that you were doing, but it's a different take on it, and you actually can add it into your art. But the thing is, like I said, with the HEMA, they were actually doing this already, which makes sense. I do this in part because Taba Sensei actually told me that, you know, yeah, my late teacher told me that it's up to me to find what works and makes things my martial art, not to just follow blindly. Like I said, when I read that, I also kept on going, and I found that someone had asked a question, and someone else had given them an answer, and the response to the answer was, "That's nice, it makes sense, but that's not the way I do it." And I think it was about getting more speed. And there are different ways to get speed, that's fine, but one of the things I tell people is, at the end, there's a better way based on the human body. You know, you might think, okay, to get speed, you have to do X, Y, and Z, but there's so much research on how to get speed from different sports that they've actually already determined how to do things better. You don't have to actually reinvent the wheel a lot of times. Again, going back to that whole idea that this gentleman was doing in HEMA, where he was going to see who had the right answer to different things in the books. So I guess one of the things that ended up happening is I started thinking about the whole idea of transmission of knowledge. Now, knowledge changes. We actually have more information now than we did 100 years ago, just because we have more information. If you think about it, not just the information, but even just access of information. Nowadays, anyone could go in PubMed and at least read the abstracts of all the articles in scientific journals. In the past, you had to go to a university library to access some of these articles. And there is something else, though, about teaching. Besides new information coming out and us really wanting to get the best techniques to prolong life and be usable, a lot of people talk about being, how do I want to say this? Sometimes people talk about how they keep a pure lineage and they do it exactly the way it was done 100 years ago. Now, let's assume that they were able to do it like 100 years ago and they didn't add information. That's actually bad, because you're going to have injuries that we could have been easily prevented by pretty much using the new information. But besides that, I want you to think of when you were a kid. You may have played a game called telephone. Pretty much, if it has different names, but the idea is you whisper into someone's ear, they whisper the same phrase to someone else, and at the end, the last person says what the phrase was. And usually the phrase comes out really odd and peculiar and completely different than what was originally said. Now, think about this. This is one person whispering to another. One to one person. Now, imagine this. We can misinterpret what someone whispers into your ear 2 seconds before you pass it to the next person. Now, imagine your teacher teaches you something, then you move on and do something else. Then you teach your students, then they move on and do something else. Then they have students and they move on. What's going to happen is, just because of the transmission of knowledge, things are going to change from one person to the other. Kata makes it a lot easier not to avoid that, and videos make it a lot easier to avoid that. But here's the thing that's funny. A lot of times you'll hear people say how they do things exactly like the founder of their style did, and then someone finds a video of the founder or the founder's last living student doing a certain thing, and what ends up happening is, well, no, the thing is he was doing it that way because he had an injury or he was old, or a lot of different reasons why they say that someone is not doing the kata the way they did. The thing is, things change. Transmission of knowledge is going to change because of misinterpretations. Sometimes this is actually a good thing, because by misinterpreting one thing, you may actually get something better. If you are into biology, there is actually something called genetic drift. And what happens sometimes is you have a population that is isolated, and their genes start changing from just by random chance. For instance, let's say we have 3 birds. One's golden, one's red, one's blue. And for some reason, the golden one doesn't have kids, or their eggs were eaten by predators, and so the gold disappears from that population. It doesn't happen because of anything wrong with the bird or any difference in, it just happens because random chance. A lot of times people talk about the best martial arts, or how things were done. Well, here's the thing to remember is there are very few people choose a martial art because this is the best. They usually choose it either because of advertisement, or they just happen to like the instructor, or convenience. And so sometimes people will have you'll have more types of one school than others. It doesn't necessarily mean that's actually the best one. If you think about it, Minamoto Musashi was considered the greatest swordsman of Japan, but he didn't leave any students, so we don't have any of his schools left anymore. What I'm trying to say is this, I guess, is in martial arts, we do have a tendency to want to believe that we have something no one else does. Truth is, everything I have, someone else will have somewhere else. Everything I do, there's going to be someone who can do what I do great, better than me. Now, the question is, as you are studying your martial art, and your martial art is evolving, whether you want it to or not, it is going to change. Do you want to do a martial art with understanding, or do you want to follow a martial art as if it was a blind religion? Those are really the 2 choices we have. We're either going to follow blindly or do our own research. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you can actually think of anything that you would like to see me touch on, usually I will tell you what I tend to do is I tend to go into the PubMed databases and try to find the answers to injuries or anything like that. If you like the channel and you are trying to support it, consider going to Amazon and getting either Cirrus and the Rarest Thing or Off the Rails. I hope you enjoyed this and have a nice day.